My daughter woke me up. Daddy, something in the toilet tried to grab me. It was 2 a.m., but I checked the toilet anyway. I checked under the lid, inside the bowl, behind the tank. Nothing. I asked her to describe what she felt, and she thought about it for a second and said, like a hand, with a long nail. I put her back to bed, and when I told my wife what happened, she said, "That's weird. I felt something last week too." The next morning, I was in the middle of checking the pipes when my daughter came into the kitchen and said, "Daddy, can we get a new toilet? The hand that tried to grab me keeps screaming." I called a plumber, but before he came, my daughter appeared in my bedroom doorway again. "Daddy, I figured out what it was. I have a surprise for you." In her room, on her desk, was a moving shoebox with a book on top of it. I slowly lifted the corner of it. Inside was a rat, soaking wet, long tail whipping the sides of the box, scrambling over itself to get out. I slammed it shut. I grabbed my daughter by the shoulders. "Did it touch you?" "No, Daddy!" I didn't believe her. I drove her to the hospital myself, called animal control from the parking lot, and sat next to her while they ran every test they needed to run. My daughter was given the all clear, but my wife was at risk for disease because they found a scratch on the back of her thigh from the toilet rat. Apparently, the chances of a rat or snake coming up your toilet isn't as impossible as you'd think. While gaming with my new online friend, I heard my sister screaming and shutting her laptop closed. She ran around the house, closing blinds and making sure the doors were locked. I paused the game and asked what's wrong, but she just pointed to her laptop. I opened it and saw a Reddit post she'd made, sharing her experience being stalked by someone named Dave. Her inbox had a new DM. "Your post made finding you too easy. Can't wait to try you soon," followed by a picture of our house. My stomach dropped. My new online friend I'd been gaming with was named Dave. We were supposed to meet up for the first time in a couple of hours. I told my sister and she broke down, saying Dave had tried to unalive her before, and if I went to meet him, he'd probably do something to me in order to get to her. We called the police and set a trap. That evening, Dave pulled up, texting me he's outside ready to meet his gaming buddy. My sister looked out and while shaking confirmed that was his car. I stepped outside, my heart beating through my chest. He looked at me with a smile and asked me to give him a tour of my house, but a dozen officers swarmed him instantly. They tackled him to the ground and pulled out his ID, but when we looked at it, we saw his name wasn't registered as Dave, it was Wayne's, yet his picture matched perfectly. So if the man on the ground in front of me wasn't Dave, where was the real Dave? That's when my phone started ringing. My sister. I answered, and a man's voice came through. "Congratulations, you just fell for my bait." I heard my sister scream, and the line went dead. My teacher slammed a paper down on my desk. "Book report. This is due in a week. Make sure you all read every page." She glared at me, knowing I'd do anything to get out of reading. She leaned down. "Remember, if you don't pass, I'm holding you back a year." I just nodded, and went home and played Fortnite the whole night, saying I'd start tomorrow. But as I kept getting wins every day after school, I finally checked the due date. Tomorrow. I completely panicked, shutting off my console. If I failed, I'd get held back. My parents would kill me. I was pacing around my room, completely panicking on what to do. I immediately looked up the book and breathed a huge sigh of relief when I saw there was a movie. I watched it twice just to be sure, and made up an entire presentation with ChatGPT. I had to stay up the entire night, and when I walked into class the next day shaking, I could tell she was suspicious. She called my name, and I walked up to the front of the class. I read off my AI-generated notes, and I could see her looking more and more suspicious of me. I was standing there sweating. She definitely knew I watched the movie, but it was almost over. Any questions? Nobody raised their hands, and I was relieved. But then our teacher raised hers. My heart stopped beating. "Yes, I was wondering if you could tell us what the difference was between the book and the movie." My heart completely stopped. Time slowed down. I knew it was over. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. But then, it hit me. "I'm sorry, miss. I never saw the movie." She just sat there shocked as I sat back down. My phone buzzed, and I saw a bank notification that my wife just took out $3,000. I immediately felt my fists clench and saw her getting ready to take our kids to school. "Why did you do that? You can't keep spending all our money on clothes." But she didn't say anything, just walked out. I knew something weird was going on, but a few minutes later, another notification. iPhone tracking deactivated. Oh no, I knew something was definitely wrong. Why would she turn her location off? But just before I could call her, someone knocked at the door. I opened it, and two cops had their hats off. "Sir, is your wife named Maria?" "Yeah, why? Did something happen?" He looked like he was about to cry. "Sir, there was an accident. Your wife's van had collided with a semi-truck. It exploded. There were 3 victims." My heart was racing. I knew he had to be lying. "No, she was just here. Stop." I grabbed my phone to call her, but saw another notification. Receipts for plane tickets. That's what she spent the money on. She was trying to surprise me, and I got mad at her. He grabbed my shoulder. "Sir, we have to go identify the bodies. You have to come with us right now." "No, you're lying. Let me call her." I pressed call, but it didn't even start ringing. It just went straight to voicemail. "No, please answer. Please tell me this is a joke." "Sir, her phone was in the crash. It's unlikely it still works." I stared at the notification from earlier. Location disabled. I realized why that popped up. I started crying and fell onto the ground. The last thing I did was teachers yell at her. I just wanted to say sorry, but they helped me up. We have to go. But just as we opened the door, my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I was about to press decline, but the officer stopped me. Sir, you should answer that just in case. You don't know who it could be. I was in no mood to talk, but I wiped my tears away. I pressed answer, but as soon as I did, I heard her voice. Hey, I left my phone in the van. I think someone stole it. Can you come pick us up? I couldn't breathe. I said, honey, are you okay? Yeah. Why are you crying, you baby? I immediately burst out in tears, telling her I was so sorry for yelling at her earlier. She had no idea what just happened. I found 2 pregnancy tests in the bathroom my twins shared. The boxes were empty, but the receipt was still sitting in the trash. I had a son and a daughter, so my brain went to one place. I walked into the living room. Autumn was on the couch, painting her toenails bright red. Chris was next to her playing video games. Can we talk, Autumn? She barely looked up. Sure. I held out the 2 empty boxes. Are these yours? She froze mid-stroke. No. Chris paused his game. You're pregnant? They are not my pregnancy tests, Autumn said again. I'm not mad. I just want the truth. Autumn's eyes narrowed. Dad, I'm not pregnant. If I was, I would at least tell Chris. I kept pushing. There's no shame, Autumn. Just tell me. Autumn went from calm to glaring at me. Chris had gone quiet. Autumn's head snapped to him. He looked pale, sweaty, and green all at once, and he leaned over and threw up on the hardwood floor. I rubbed his back while Autumn grabbed paper towels and cleaned it up. You okay? Yep, he squeaked. Liar, Autumn said, tossing the towels in the trash. I'm fine. You're not. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes. Autumn switched. No, Chris shouted before he caught what he said. He glared at her. What aren't you two telling me? Which part? They said at the exact same time. They only ever spoke in sync when they were lying. Their hands flew out. Chris threw paper. Autumn had scissors. Your confession, she told him. I absolutely hate you, Chris said. I had my girlfriend over this weekend. Chris mumbled. My eyes snapped to him. You got your girlfriend pregnant? I don't know, Chris screamed back. Autumn leaned back on the couch. You could just call her. Chris put his phone on speaker. His girlfriend picked up on the 3rd ring. Did you use my card to buy 2 pregnancy tests? A pause. It was only a scare, Chris. I'm not pregnant. Chris finally exhaled. I rubbed my temples. Chris looked at Autumn, then back at me. Autumn's a lesbian and has a girlfriend. Autumn's nail polish bottle hit him square in the chest. I lied about my age and got caught, and it was the best thing to ever happen to me. My mom couldn't afford to pay rent, so I said I was 19 and got a job at a construction site to stop us from losing our home. But on my first day, I was too weak to even lift a cinder block, and the foreman immediately noticed I wasn't the age I said I was. I kept trying because I knew I had to save our home, but he walked over and dragged me into his office. Go home. I can't have a kid on site. He pointed me to the door. I cried and explained my situation, but he just crossed his arms. I could lose my license because of you. Now leave. I was devastated and walked off, and when I came home I saw Mom crying at the kitchen table, holding an eviction warning that just came in. We were 7 days from losing our home. I didn't know what to do, and next day skipped school to instead look for work. But when I walked past the construction site, the foreman ran over to me. He said nothing and simply handed me an envelope. I opened it and saw 2 months worth of rent inside. I teared up and hugged him, and he told me, I was just like you once, working and lying about my age so my family could afford food. You deserve it. I was about to cry when suddenly he handed me a piece of paper with an address. He explained this was his cousin's corner shop. He'll hire you cash under the table. I already called him. Stay in school, kid. I couldn't believe it. And when I told Mom everything, she cried tears of joy. I watched the next day as she paid our rent and had the biggest smile on my face. A girl named Madison bumped into me in the hallway, and my science project I was carrying dropped and cracked on the floor. I'd spent 4 weeks making my own organic stain remover spray, and now the liquid was all over the floor. I quickly grabbed the bottle to save what was left, and Madison looked down at me and laughed. Guess your stupid project is ruined. Mine's way better anyway. See you in the gym. She laughed and walked off. I carried my project to the gym and started supergluing the bottle of my spray together. But Madison sat at the table next to me and laughed at me trying to repair my project. She announced, "This was so easy if you're actually smart. I barely spent 20 minutes and mine's still better." She pointed at my project. I finished my repair just as the judges started walking around, but I barely had enough spray left to demonstrate anything. The judges reached Madison, and she proudly showed off her volcano made of red paper mache. She told them the inside of the volcano was filled with red ink. Then she held up a button and said, "If I press this, the ink will flow out of it like lava. Would you like to see?" The judges were impressed and nodded, but when she pressed the button, nothing happened. Her smile dropped, and she slammed the button repeatedly, but again, nothing. The judges leaned in and wrote something on their clipboards, but suddenly the ink exploded. It went all over the judges' white shirts and ruined their clothes. Madison went pale and grabbed tissues to try clean it, but when she wiped their shirts, she smeared the ink around and only made it worse. The judges backed away and told her to stop. She kept apologizing, but they just moved to my project next, still in their destroyed shirts. They asked me, "What is your project?" And I replied, "Let me show you." I took out my stain remover spray, sprayed it on their shirts, and wiped it with my own brush I'd also made. Immediately, the ink stains disappeared. appeared. The judge's face dropped as he yelled, "My shirt is clean again." One by one, I cleaned every judge's shirt, using up every last drop of my spray. They gave me the gold ribbon, and when I looked over, Madison threw her arms in the air in anger and knocked her volcano over. The rest of the red ink spilled onto her clothes, and I just held up my empty bottle of stain remover. Too bad, I'm all out. Bet you wish you had my stupid project now. I won the first place prize in school, but when I looked over, the rich kid was staring at me with a sick smile. I was crying at lunch because my parents couldn't afford college, when my teacher gave me an ad for the school's essay contest. Full scholarship for first place. She looked at me. "You're the best writer I've taught. Enter this." So I did, and I won. I cried happy tears and hugged my teacher, but when I looked over, the runner-up, Timmy, was smiling right at me. His parents were major donors to the school. They could pay for Harvard, but Timmy wanted this as a bragging trophy. The next day, the principal pulled me out of class, and we walked to his office. Timmy's parents were right there, and Timmy sat beside them, smirking. The principal slid my essay across the desk. "There's been a grading error. After re-evaluation, the scholarship has been reassigned to Timmy." I couldn't believe it, and picked up the essay. I instantly saw this wasn't what I submitted. Entire paragraphs were changed, and crucial sentences were removed. I pointed it out, but the parents cut in. "Don't lie to make yourself look better. The results are final." I begged Timmy to tell the truth about my essay because this was my only chance at college, but the principal interrupted. "It's not about chances. It's about being fair and awarding the best essay." Timmy laughed at me. "The only truth is that I'm so much smarter than you." I felt my heart break, and I watched Timmy get handed my scholarship. I teared up, realizing I'd lost my one shot. But just as I was about to leave, my teacher walked in with a piece of paper and the superintendent behind her. She placed my original essay on the desk next to the altered version, and the difference was clear. She pointed at the principal. "He did this to a student in my class last year. I'm not letting it happen again." The parents' faces drained of color, but the principal immediately started pointing at them. They made me change the essay. They threatened to sue and said they'd pull their funding. I'm innocent. His face was white, and I couldn't believe he was throwing them under the bus. But as he was jumping around blaming them, an envelope of cash suddenly fell from his pocket onto the desk. Timmy's parents' names were on it. The room went silent, and the superintendent instantly fired him and escorted Timmy and his parents. The teacher then walked over and placed the scholarship award in my hand. "I told you you're the best writer I've ever taught." My girlfriend's sister yanked me into an empty classroom and shoved me against the wall. "I know what you did to my sister at Dominic's party. You're disgusting." I asked what she was talking about, but she stormed out. Harley hadn't answered my texts since Sunday, but I figured she was hungover since her best friend Vinny kept handing her drinks at the party. By midnight, she couldn't stand, so I carried her to my car and drove her home. By second period, the principal was telling me, "Harley's parents filed a report saying you hurt her at Dominic's party. You're suspended until further notice." What? No, I drove her home because she was sick. He didn't care. Harley had blocked my number. When I went to her house, her dad threatened me with a baseball bat. Mom couldn't stop crying. "I'll get you help, but you need to tell us what happened." I drove her home because she was sick. That's it. A detective told me multiple witnesses saw me carrying Harley to my car while she could barely walk. Because she was sick. Vinny says he saw you acting aggressive with her earlier that night. I slammed my hands on the table. "Vinny's the one that gave her the drinks that made her sick. You should be talking to him." Nobody did. Instead, someone spray-painted Predator across our garage door, and my college acceptance letter sat on my desk, worthless now. Then Dominic called. "My neighbor's doorbell camera caught everything from that night. I'm sending it to the police." The video showed Vinny following Harley outside and coming back 15 minutes later without her. 2 minutes later, I carried Harley to my car, her head rolling back, barely conscious. Harley sat there crying. I don't remember any of this. I remember Vinny giving me multiple drinks, then nothing until Sunday afternoon. They tested Harley's blood and found out Vinny had spiked her drinks. Vinny was arrested that afternoon. Then Harley's sister approached us. "I need to tell you something. I knew it was Vinny. I've been hooking up with him for months, but I couldn't let anyone find out about us." I added up the cash on my bedroom floor and finally hit $550. I jumped up and started pacing my room because I'd been saving for a PS5 every birthday since 5th grade, and now I was only $50 short. I needed to hide it before my dad pulled one of his random cleanups, so I grabbed the dustiest game I owned off my shelf, an NBA 2K15, and slid the envelope inside before snapping the case shut and burying it at the bottom of my game box in the closet. I went to bed feeling smarter than my dad for the first time in my life. I got home from school the next day and pushed open my bedroom door, but my closet was hanging wide open and my game box and the stack next to it was gone. I sprinted downstairs and asked my dad where my games were, and he said cheerfully without looking up from the dishes, "Oh, I dropped that whole pile off at Goodwill on my way back from work. You haven't touched those in years, so I figured I might as well give it to someone who needs it more." I asked him when, and he said about 30 minutes ago. I grabbed my bike off the porch and pedaled the 2 miles to Goodwill faster than I ever had. I dropped my bike at the front door and ran straight to the games shelf and tore through every row, but the case wasn't there. I walked up to the cashier out of breath and asked her if anyone had bought an NBA 2K15 disc in the last hour. She was scanning a coffee mug and didn't even look up. Yeah, Some guy bought a stack of games 20 minutes ago. $5 for the whole pile. I asked if the cases had anything in them, and she finally looked up at me. Honey, we don't open them. Whatever was inside is gone. Can you stop bothering me now? I rode my bike home in tears, and the second I burst through the front door, I marched up to my dad at the kitchen table and slammed my hands down in front of him. You owe me $550. There was an envelope in the NBA 2K15 case. That was 3 years of birthday money, and you better pay me back. My dad set his fork down and looked at me. You hid $500 in a game case and didn't tell anyone? It was my money, Dad, and it's my house. You're grounded for 2 weeks for yelling at me, and you can forget the PS5 this year. I stood there shaking, but he ignored me and went back to his food. I walked up to my room and slammed the door shut, and from downstairs I heard him yell, "Since you want to slam doors in this house, I'll be taking your tablet too." I sat on my bed staring at the spot in my closet where the game box used to be. Some guy at Goodwill got my PS5 for $5. Fudge! For 6 years after my brother died, I kept his Xbox controller on the couch next to me. Every Saturday he'd come in, ruffle my hair, and say, "Come here, little man," as he handed me the black controller and took the red one for himself. The first time I asked to be player 1, he wagged his finger and said, "No dude, player 2's the better seat. You get to watch someone you love have fun." I never asked again. I lived for Saturdays just to spend time with him. Then one spring he died. After that I played alone but would always put the red controller back on his cushion. It wasn't the same, but he was still there next to me in spirit. A year after I lost him, my little brother Noah was born. At 2, he reached for the red controller and I moved it to the armrest. At 3, he pointed at it and asked whose it was. I told him his brother's, and he asked who his brother was. I told him a good one. At 4, he asked to play every Saturday. I made excuses for a year. Then one morning he climbed up, put his hands on my knee, and said, "Please, just once." I didn't have anything left. I patted the cushion next to me and said, "Come here, little man." Noah scrambled up. I gave him the black controller and picked up the red one for the first time. "Can I be player 1? I wagged my finger and ruffled his hair. "No, dude, player 2's the better seat. You get to watch someone you love have fun." Noah settled into the cushion with both hands on the controller. That's when I realized I was doing what my brother used to do. I looked down at Noah grinning at the screen. Ethan was right. It is the better seat. In the middle of a training session, I saw a man's eye peeking out from inside the landing mat, watching the underage girls. Now I was coaching the freshman high jump team, and I knew if I exposed him right now, I'd forever scare them away from coming back. So instead, I decided to make him pay. I started sprinting and jumped over the bar, hitting the mat as hard as possible. The man groaned in pain, and I saw the zip on the mat moving. He was trying to get out. I told the girls to line up, and right as the gap in the mat was getting bigger, one of them jumped and crashed onto him. Again, he violently groaned and coughed. The girl looked down with a worried face. "Ugh, what was that?" I panicked because I knew I couldn't tell her, so I quickly grunted, saying it was just my stomach problems. I had every girl do the drill 5 times each, crash landing on him again and again. I stayed by the mat for every jump, and every time I saw him try to open it, I zipped it closed. He stopped grunting after 20 or so hits, and after training was done, I carried the mat out to the dumpster and called police. I was swimming in a lake when I caught a rotting smell pooling around me. It was so strong it made me gag, so I decided to just get out. But while swimming towards shore, I felt something brush against my leg. I figured it was just weeds and kept going. But then 5 human-like fingers wrapped around my ankle and squeezed hard. I went pale and kicked as hard as I could. The fingers kept holding on and dragged my whole body under. I kept thrashing and thankfully freed my leg. I came up choking and swam to shore faster than ever. I called police, who sounded skeptical, but still sent divers. I was at home wondering if I was just crazy when I got a call telling me to come to the station. The officer told me they found out what grabbed me. Directly below where I was swimming, the divers found a car. Inside, it was a dead woman still buckled into the driver's seat. She'd been down there for 3 weeks. I shook my head and told the cop there was no way it was her. Whatever grabbed me had wrapped its fingers and squeezed, and dead people can't do that. The cop shook his head and said that's what makes this so disturbing. When the divers found her, her window was down, and her arm was floating out of it, drifting upward in the water. An underwater current had formed beside her as I was swimming, and the pressure of the moving water closed her fingers around my ankle. Apparently, the current was also getting stronger, and had I not felt her fingers and decided to swim away, I would have been pulled under for good. My wife came home bawling her eyes out, saying she had something to tell me. My stomach dropped because I have a vasectomy, but for the last 3 months, her belly has been slowly getting bigger. We hadn't spoken about it because I didn't even want to entertain the possibility, but now I had no choice. She sat me down and told me she just went to the doctor, and they told her she was pregnant. I instantly flipped out, standing up and telling her to get out, but she grabbed my arm. I never cheated. I swear I don't know how this happened. I asked her if she thinks I'm an idiot, and went into our room to start packing her things, but she followed me in. I couldn't do this to her. I made her take a pregnancy test on the spot, which she happily did, but when When it showed positive, she dropped on the floor crying. That's impossible, please believe me. This went on for a week, her insisting she didn't cheat, and me telling her to then explain the child growing in her belly. She never could, and every time she took another test, it was positive. I ended up staying at a friend's house to be away from her, but 3 days later she showed up at his door. Her hair was thinner from the stress, and she had visibly lost weight because her appetite was so low, but her belly had actually grown a little. She pointed to the mini lie detector test in her car, saying she'd just spent her work bonus on it and wanted to take it right now to prove she never cheated. I hooked her up and spent an hour grilling her. Somehow she was telling the truth. Every time she said she didn't cheat, the test buzzed green. I was convinced she rigged the detector or something, but eventually agreed to drive with her to the hospital to get a second professional opinion. I felt like the world's biggest idiot explaining to the doctor that I have a vasectomy, but my wife is pregnant and we don't know how. He ordered an ultrasound first to confirm the pregnancy. They put the gel on her belly, and then the machine lit up. What we saw wasn't a baby. It was a 3-pound tumor in her stomach, signaling stage 4 ovarian cancer. That's why her hair was thinner and why she was losing weight. She slid into the passenger seat with the same smile she'd worn both times she failed me before. Her pen clicked twice as she set the clipboard on her knee. All right, driver's license test, 3rd attempt. Go ahead and adjust your mirrors for me. I tilted the rear view, and the dash cam light blinked red behind it. The one my dad made me keep on after she'd failed me twice on stuff she made up. He was on the bench outside the DMV watching us pull out. A third fail meant another summer at Subway, saving up $80 I didn't have. I counted 3 full seconds at the stop sign on Linden before her pen scratched the first mark. That was a California stop, didn't even slow down for it. Noted. She told me to turn with 30 feet of road left, and I had to stomp the brake to make it. That was a hesitation, failure to commit to a directional change. Noted. A yellow light caught me at the next intersection, and I made a clean stop, which sent her hands slamming the dash. What are you doing? You don't stop for a yellow. You go through it. She marked the next mistake on her clipboard before her hands had left the dashboard. That's a failure to maintain traffic flow right there. Noted. She kept writing as I drove the rest of the way back. As I pulled into the spot, she clicked her pen one last time. And of course there was the speed, going 42 and a 35 all the way down Linden. Noted. I'd been doing 33. She tore the failed sheet off her clipboard and held it out without a word. I took it, then reached up and tapped the dashcam screen. Her own voice came out of the speaker. That was a California stop. Didn't even slow down for it. Noted. The GPS readout on screen showed 33 the whole stretch she'd called 42. Her face went white. She lunged for the mirror, and her seatbelt locked and yanked her back into the seat. Turn that off. Turn it off. Dad was already walking across the lot toward the car. I opened my door and stepped out. Mirrors are perfectly adjusted, sweetheart. Dad pulled the dash cam off the mirror and held it up as he walked her back inside. The supervisor watched the footage twice and fired her before we left the building. She was still crying at her desk when they escorted her out, clipboard in her lap, pen clicking in her hand. I had my license 3 days later. That Saturday, I drove through town and spotted her sitting alone on a park bench near the DMV. I rolled the window down. I mimed writing in a notepad. Noted. I flicked her off and drove away. My stepson showed me his recent messages with his dad and said, "My real dad is back and I choose him. You were just a placeholder." 10 years of teaching him to ride a bike, throw a baseball and tie a tie flashed through my head, but his cold eyes set me straight. "Okay, I respect your choice," I said calmly. His younger brother Charlie watched the whole thing and ran over to hug me. "It's okay, Dad." Charlie glared at Joshua. "He left once and he'll do it again. You know that, right?" Rick showed up Saturday in a rented BMW, and Joshua ran out with a packed bag. While Joshua loaded the car, Rick promised him a car for his birthday and college money. "You okay, Dad?" Charlie asked. He made his choice. "Want to build that bookshelf we've been planning?" Charlie and I spent the day in the garage while Rick bought Joshua an iPhone 15 and designer clothes. "He's the best dad I could ever ask for," Joshua told me when he was back. But 2 weeks later on his birthday, Rick texted, "Sorry buddy, can't make dinner. Work emergency." Joshua celebrated by himself at McDonald's. Rick promised Christmas in Aspen but texted, "Sorry kid, girlfriend doesn't want kids along." Charlie and I spent New Year's cooking mom's recipes while Joshua sat alone in his room after Rick canceled New Year's in Times Square. Then Joshua's graduation day arrived in May, and I didn't know if I could go until Charlie handed me his tie. "I want to see my brother graduate." We sat in the auditorium watching Joshua's head snap toward the door every time it opened, hoping Rick showed up. But he texted, "Something came up. Congrats though. Send pics." Joshua walked across the stage, face pale and tears in his eyes. After the ceremony, he found us in the parking lot. "You actually came?" "Charlie wanted to see you graduate," I said coldly. Charlie glared at Joshua. "You had a dad who loved you, and you threw him away for someone who doesn't even show up." I woke up to 20 missed calls from my boss. I looked at the clock and saw that I should have woken up 3 hours ago, and now I was risking being late for my flight. I opened my boss's text. If you missed the flight to the work meeting in New York, then you're fired. I'm sick of you being so flaky. This is your last chance. My flight was going to leave in 1 hour. When I got to the airport, I was panicking because I needed to find my gate number immediately. I was running around looking for it when an older man stopped me. "Excuse me, can you help me? I can't find my gate and I need help because I'm lost." I didn't know what to do, because I knew that if I said yes, I could miss my flight and lose my job forever. But the old man looked really sad, and I knew he was vulnerable, so I decided to help him anyway. "I'll help you find it. Let me see your ticket." He handed me his ticket and thanked me. His gate was on the other side of the terminal, and I had to guide him all the way there. With every step I took, I knew I was getting closer and closer to losing my job. And when I saw that I had 5 minutes until my plane started boarding, I had to abandon him. "I'm sorry, I need to go. I hope this was helpful." I immediately turned around and sprinted towards my gate. I was 50 feet away when I saw the gate agent close the boarding doors. I tried to get her to hold them for me for 5 more seconds so I could make the flight. "Wait, I need to get on the plane." The agent shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. Doors are closed." I sat down in defeat and watched my plane pull away from the gate. I felt my phone buzz. A text from my boss. "Did you make the flight?" I didn't know how to tell him that I wasn't going to make it. I put my head in my hands, thinking that everything was doomed. But 30 minutes later, everyone started screaming. I looked up. People were running to the windows crying. Others were covering their mouths, gasping loudly. Every TV screen in the terminal switched to breaking news. I saw the headline and couldn't move. It was showing the plane I was supposed to be on had crashed after takeoff with no survivors. The realization hit me. If I hadn't stopped to help the old man find his gate, I would have made the flight and I'd be dead. Then my boss called me. I answered. He yelled, "Did you make it on the flight?" My voice cracked. "No, thank God." He sighed in relief. "I don't even care about the meeting anymore. I'm just glad you're alive." While I was at the zoo, someone yelled, "Oh my God, he's gonna fall in." I turned around. "What? Who?" I realized my son Tommy wasn't next to me, and that's when I saw where she was pointing. He was climbing over the top of an enclosure. "Tommy, what the hell are you doing?" He looked over at me. "Look, Dad, I'm gonna feed them," someone shouted. "They're gonna pull you inside. Get down from there." And that's when I saw the banana. I looked over and saw the sign, "Silverback Gorillas." I started pushing through the crowd, but everyone was just filming instead of helping. "Tommy, get down from there. Look, Dad, it's Donkey Kong." The huge gorillas were walking over to him now, wanting the banana. I finally pushed my way up to the glass, but Tommy was too high on top of the wall. The gorillas beat their chests, screaming for the banana. "Tommy, put the banana down and get off the fence." But he wasn't listening. He thought they were friendly. He started waving the banana around. The gorilla started jumping for it. My heart was racing. I had to do something. I started banging on the glass, trying to scare them away. "Hey, back off! Get away from him!" But banging on the glass only made things worse. The gorillas got more agitated. "Tommy, get the hell down right now! I'm gonna give them a snack, Dad." "Tommy, no!" He leaned forward, stretching his arm out as far as it could go, and the gorilla reached up. It didn't just grab the banana, it grabbed Tommy's entire arm. Tommy fell completely into the gorilla den. "Ah, Tommy, oh my God!" Everyone watched and recorded as both gorillas went absolutely insane. The zookeepers finally ran in, but just as I thought they were gonna save my boy's life, one of the zookeepers yelled, "Hey, stop, drop the banana." They completely ignored my son, and just as the gorilla held the banana above his mouth, they screamed, "Stop!" Tommy started crawling toward the zookeepers, reaching out for help, but they literally stepped around him, like he wasn't even there. "What are you doing? Save my son!" The gorilla almost took a bite, but the zookeepers fired tranquilizers. It immediately fell over and hit the ground, and Tommy ran outside crying. I turned to the head zookeeper. "What the hell was that? Why didn't you save my son?" The zookeeper had the audacity to look annoyed. "Sir, a regular banana can contaminate these gorillas. Do you know how expensive they are?" I couldn't hold back. I swung at the zookeeper's face, blood going everywhere. I didn't think that would be enough to put him into a coma, but he deserved it, because Tommy can't even look at a banana anymore without having a panic attack. I pulled up our group's slides, knowing every single one was empty. It was our AP history final, a 5-person group presentation worth 30% of our grade. I split the work up and sent everyone their section. One kid pasted a random YouTube link, and nobody else ever opened the Google Slides. So I built the whole thing myself, because I wasn't about to fail over people who didn't care. The day before the presentation, my group was bragging to everyone about how good our project was going to be, like they actually did something. So that night I sent Mr. Callahan proof that I did all of it. He read it and didn't say a word. Then I saved my own copy, opened the group file, and deleted every single slide. Presentation day, my group walked up and the screen was empty. The first one tried to wing it, but got our century wrong in her first sentence and stopped. The next kid rambled about something that had nothing to do with our project, and the class started laughing. Nobody else even tried. Then one of them turned around and pointed right at me. "This is your fault. You were supposed to handle all of this." Mr. Callahan set his pen down and faced the kid who said it. "Is that so?" He leaned back in in his chair and turned to me. Do you have anything? I pulled out my flash drive, loaded my own slides, and presented every section start to finish without missing a word. Mr. Callahan gave me 100 and the rest of them zeros. The next week, he stood in front of the class. All presentations are solo from now on. He turned to my old group. You four owe me yours by Friday. After class, one of them shoved past me. You deleted our slides. No, I deleted my slides. I kept walking. You guys never made any. Connor shoved me into the lockers, same as every morning, and my books hit the floor. I picked them up and started walking. Pathetic, he called out behind me, but I put my head down and continued walking to first period. Nobody knew I could have put him in a hospital anytime I wanted. I was halfway through first period when my phone buzzed under my desk. A text from my best friend. That voice message you sent me last night leaked. They're playing it in the cafeteria. Run. By the time I got there, half the school was already inside. Circled up. Phones out. Then I heard my own voice coming through the speakers. The message I'd sent at 2 in the morning. I'm tired, bro. I'm so tired of pretending this doesn't hurt. The crowd erupted. Someone spotted me at the door and yelled, "There's the punching bag." Connor walked to the front with his arms crossed. Don't touch that speaker. I want everyone to hear this. My voice kept going. Connor pushes me every single day and I don't do anything. Everyone thinks I'm weak. Connor took a bow. Then my voice changed. What nobody knows is I've been boxing since I was 6. My brother was a Golden Gloves champion. He trained me every single day. I could end Connor anytime I want. The laughter died and Connor's arms dropped, but the message kept playing. But I won't, because Connor's dad is the drunk driver who killed my brother 2 years ago. The cafeteria went dead silent. I sat at his grave and promised him I'd never let what happened turn me into someone he wouldn't recognize. The speaker crackled and the message ended. Someone pulled up the article and read my brother's name out loud. Darnell. Connor stepped backward. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But the crowd was already closing in. They circled him the same way they'd circled up to laugh at me. Someone started chanting, "Fight, fight, fight." The whole cafeteria picked it up and every phone came up as the crowd split, and I walked straight toward him. Connor's hands came up. He thought this was it. I stopped in front of him, held out my hand, and the chanting died. He stared at it, and then so did everyone else. He took it, and I pulled him in and held tight. "You're not your father." I felt him break, his whole body shaking against mine. The toughest kid in school crying into the shoulder of the kid he'd been shoving into lockers for 2 years. I let go, turned, and walked out. The crowd split to let me through, and nobody said a word. I kept my promise. I found a loaded gun in my dad's closet, but when I asked him why he had one, he said, "It's for protection." I thought that was weird because we live in the safest town in the whole state. So when he left the house later, I secretly removed the bullets from his gun. My dad and his brother were going drinking, and they had a reputation for being dumb together, so I did it just to be safe. But then my dad came home hours later and went to bed, and in the middle of the night, I heard our doorknob rattling. My stomach sank, and I ran to my dad and woke him up. He immediately got up and grabbed his gun. He ran downstairs before I could tell him there were no bullets. I saw the intruder with his back turned and hood up, going through our pockets. My dad pointed his gun and fired, but the shot went blank. He looked at his gun confused and went to fire again, but the intruder immediately turned and ran at my dad. He tackled him hard into the wall, and blood started pouring from my dad's head. I was so scared, I immediately ran to the closet and called the police while crying. I felt like the worst son in the world. They arrived minutes later, but the intruder was already gone. He hadn't taken anything, and my dad had a fractured skull. We took him to the hospital, and thankfully he survived. But then while in the bed, he asked me if I did anything to the gun. I started crying and confessed immediately, saying, "I'm so sorry." But instead of being mad, he hugged me immediately and started crying too. He told me the man who broke in was actually his brother. He was just drunk and looking for his car keys because dad had took them away. "If you didn't take out those bullets, I would have shot my own brother." I was in disbelief and asked if his brother was okay, but he shook his head. "No, he's in jail for driving drunk." Me and my dad were playing Pokemon Go when a cop car pulled up beside us. One officer got out while the other stayed in the car looking at his phone. My dad was swaying side to side, smiling and holding his phone close to his face. The officer asked, "What are you two doing?" But my dad didn't even look up. "Playing Pokemon Go." The officer's jaw clenched. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I stepped in. "My dad is autistic, sir. We're just playing a game." But the officer ignored me and looked at the small wet stain on my dad's pants. "What happened to your pants?" My dad laughed. "I dribbled in the bathroom, sir." The officer replied, "Those are way too wet for a dribble. Have you been drinking or doing drugs?" My dad shook his head. "I don't do that." But the officer crossed his arms. "A grown man walking around a park with a kid. Wet pants. Won't make eye contact. You've got to be on something. I need to see your bag." He grabbed my dad's bag and started going through it. He pulled out snacks, clothes, a juice box, and only got more angry when he didn't find alcohol. But then he saw a Pokemon auto catcher, and his eyes lit up. "What's this thing?" My dad replied, "It's an auto catcher. It connects to Pokemon Go." But the officer smirked, "Looks like drugs," and put it in his pocket. My dad's eyes went wide. He started rocking back and forth. "That's mine. I need that. Please give it back." He reached for it and tried to take it back, but the officer instantly grabbed grabbed and forced him against the hood of the car. That's assault on an officer. Hands behind your back. My dad started crying. I just want my auto catcher back. I worked overtime for it. I scream. He has autism, but the officer didn't care and started reaching for his cuffs. That's when the other cop stepped out. He was older and, judging by his shirt, also higher ranking. What's going on? The first officer said, this man assaulted me, but the second cop just started pulling him off my dad. I saw everything. He took the auto catcher from the first cop's pocket and gave it back to my dad. My dad smiled and hugged it, and the older cop told his colleague, we're having a conversation about this. They got back in their car, and that's when the older cop tapped my dad's shoulder. By the way, there's a Snorlax right here. I was confused until he took out his phone, and I realized he was also playing Pokemon Go. I let out a loud sneeze, and Mr. Hampton shot out of his chair screaming, how dare you scream a racial slur in my classroom? I froze, telling him I sneezed, but he grabbed the classroom phone and told the front office a white student was screaming slurs for fun. I'm going to make sure you get in trouble for this, he told me. 2 minutes later, the assistant principal was in the doorway, and he walked me to the principal's office. Hampton followed behind us, shouting that I clearly thought he was an idiot, but he knew the difference between a bodily function and hate speech. They called my mom, and when she walked in, she whispered, please tell me you didn't say a slur. That hurt more than anything Hampton had said all day. Then the principal said my options were expulsion or a public apology read in front of the entire school. Hampton got right in my face and asked if I understood the pain behind that word. He was shaking with rage as he told my mom she failed me. The assistant principal even said they were considering whether this qualified as a hate crime. My mom looked at me with tears streaming down her face, asking how I could do this. I finally had enough and asked them to play the security footage from the classroom. Hampton scoffed and told the principal to play it, saying this was only going to prove his point. The principal pulled up the footage, which showed me hunched over my homework, my face scrunching up, and a loud achoo ripping through the speakers. Play it again, Hampton said, leaning into the laptop. The principal turned the volume all the way up and played it again. My mom turned to Hampton with her eyebrows raised. That's a sneeze. The principal looked uncomfortable and asked Hampton if he remembered to put his hearing aids on. Hampton's hand flew to his ear and his face went pale. They're in my desk drawer. I rolled my eyes, grabbed my backpack and walked to the door. Right before I left, I turned back to Mr. Hampton and sneezed loudly, making him jump. I used to believe my mom when she told me it was cool to have cerebral palsy. Every day I'd walk into class with my canes and everybody would stare at me. But no matter what, my mom told me they were just jealous of me. But when I got to high school, it all changed. The teachers could only protect me from the bullying for so long. And when the principal's son Brad saw me, I was his next target. He'd pretend to push my canes every time I'd walk into Mr. Regley's class, and everyone would laugh. But every time, he didn't do anything. He knew he'd get fired if he yelled at the principal's son, so he just kept quiet. I left class crying, but when I got home that day, my mom had a surprise for me. She handed me a box, and when I opened it, I saw she had bought me special shoes to help me walk. I wouldn't have to use the canes anymore, and couldn't wait. I walked into class the next day, and nobody could believe it. Brad stared at me, and I knew he was mad. But that day at lunch, they cornered me and tackled me to the ground. You think you're special? You'll always be a cripple. They ripped the shoes off of me and threw them in the garbage. I laid there crying until someone grabbed my shoulder. It was Mr. Regley. Who did this to you? And as soon as I said it was Brad, I watched his face turn red. When he found him in the hallway, he grabbed Brad's collar and pulled him into the classroom, and the entire school heard him yelling. Brad ran out and instantly went to his dad. 10 minutes later, the principal fired him for yelling at his son, and as we all watched him carry his stuff out of his classroom, he handed me a box. It was another pair of the shoes. When I woke up to an eviction notice on my front door, I knew I had to do something. So I walked into my boss's office, determined to get a raise. Sir, I need a raise. I can't afford rent, and I'm about to be homeless. He leaned back and laughed. I don't think so, buddy. Remember the company slogan? I sighed. What slogan? The slogan is that we are family in this office. Family makes sacrifices. We both knew he just wanted to keep underpaying me, but I still smirked back, because that's when I decided that if he wanted to be a family, then I would make him regret it by treating him like my dad. I walked out of the office, and during lunch, I told everyone what happened. They were furious. Then I told them my idea, and they all nodded their heads and agreed to join in. The next morning, when my boss walked into the office, the plan began, and everyone jumped up. Morning, Dad. Can you sign this, Dad? Dad, the printer's broken. His face got red with anger. What are you guys talking about? I'm not your dad. I smiled because I knew my plan was starting to work. What do you mean? You said we're family in this office. You're our papa. He couldn't think of a response, and instead he got so angry that his forehead vein almost popped out. I knew he was close to losing it. Later that day, he had a board meeting with investors. I walked walked into the meeting. Hey Papa, want me to present the numbers for you? The investors looked confused. The investor looked at my boss. Did he just call you Papa? Before my boss could say anything, I responded, yeah, my boss likes to have a family work environment. He's my dada. My boss sat there gripping the table, trying to keep his cool, because he couldn't explode in front of them. He mumbled, I can't do this anymore. Meeting tomorrow morning. Bring the whole office. The next morning, we all walked into the conference room nervous to see what would happen. Someone whispered, do you think we did too much? What if we get fired? That's when my boss walked in and looked at us. Before we could say anything, he burst into tears. I'm sorry. You deserve that raise. You all do. We were all so shocked that we stayed silent. He continued, I grew up in 7 different foster homes, and I'd never had anyone call me family before. Hearing it for the first time from all of you made me realize that deep down, that's all I wanted. The only reason why I'm so greedy with money is because I feel so alone. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Someone in the back raised their hand. So, does this mean we get an extra allowance? He laughed. Absolutely. You're all getting a raise. He pointed at me. Or in your case, a new apartment. I dare you to jump. Jax looked out the second floor window, looked back at us, and jumped. He broke his ankle and got suspended for a month. First day back, he was sitting at his desk, sniffing crushed up Smarties through a pen tube. Someone slid him a note that said, I dare you, with a checkbox. He checked it without reading the rest. Jax had never said no to a dare. The note said, I dare you to convince the sub you're the teacher's aide. Our art teacher was out sick, and the substitute had never been to our school before. She walked in mid-yawn with a folder and a coffee. Jax was already out of his seat. Hey, I'm Jax. I'm the aide for this class. She probably left my name in the folder. The sub exhaled. Oh, thank God. I don't even know where anything is in here. Yeah, she never remembers to leave my name. I basically run everything when she's out. He grabbed the attendance sheet off her desk. I got roll. You can get settled. He started calling names. By the third one, the sub sat down at a student desk and opened her folder. Jax finished roll, walked to the whiteboard, and drew a horizon line with 2 vanishing points. All right, today we're doing perspective drawing. He taught for 10 straight minutes, and the room was dead silent because nobody could tell if this was the greatest dare in school history or if Jax actually knew perspective drawing. Then Carter in the back row started whispering to the kid next to him. Jax stopped mid-sentence. Carter, you want to be my first write-up? Carter leaned back in his chair. Bro, you sit next to me in math, and right now you sit in my classroom. Last warning. Carter looked at the sub. Don't look at me. He's in charge. Jax kept teaching. 20 minutes in, he picked up the classroom phone. Hi, this is room 212, the aide for Ms. Bloom's class. We're running low on charcoal pencils. Can someone bring a set down? 5 minutes later, an office aide walked in and handed the box to Jax. He said thank you and passed them out to every desk. The door opened with 10 minutes left. Ms. Bloom walked in and stopped. Jax was at the whiteboard with a charcoal pencil behind his ear. The sub was in a student desk taking notes. 28 kids were drawing vanishing points. How long has he been up there? The sub smiled. Whole period. You've got a great aide. Jax set the pencil down and walked back to his desk without a word. He got suspended again the next day. First day back, another note slid across his desk. My grandma got a barbecue grill for her birthday and smiled because cooking for her family meant the world to her. But sadly, her barbecue didn't taste good at all. We never said anything because it made her so happy, until one day, her neighbor tried her ribs. He was a food snob and made a disgusted face, then posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, calling grandma's ribs disgusting dog food. She sat on the couch and looked at me with tears in her eyes. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should stop cooking. I wanted to console her, but before I could, I saw the neighbor had made another post. He was challenging our grandma to a barbecue cook-off, simply to show his ribs were much better than hers. He was trying to humiliate her. My grandma shook her head saying no, but I said, cooking is your dream, and we shouldn't let dirtbags get in the way of our dreams. She looked at me and said, fine, but if I lose, I'm selling the grill. I knew I couldn't let that happen. So the next week, I secretly traveled to barbecue cooking classes each day, learning as much as possible. The night before, the neighbor posted again, all about how he couldn't wait to destroy grandma. I looked up and saw her carefully prepping her ingredients with shaking hands. After she went to bed, I wrote out instructions for the perfect ribs and stuck them to her bowls. This was her only chance. But the next day, the cook-off started, and I instantly noticed her instructions weren't there. I looked around and saw the papers crumbled in the neighbor's pocket. I went pale, realizing he'd stolen them to make sure he could fully embarrass her. I looked at grandma, at her hands trembling with every step, and knew she had lost. The ribs were done, and it was time to taste. I tried his first, and unfortunately, they were really good. He grinned at me, saying, don't get sick when you try hers next. I looked over at grandma's hopeful face, and my heart shattered. I bit into her ribs, not expecting much, but somehow they were actually incredible, even better than his. The smile instantly drained from his face as he grabbed Grandma's ribs. Holy crap, these are actually so good. I stared at Grandma wondering how she pulled this off, but she just winked at me. I saw what you were doing and thought, if he's trying so hard for me, I should try for myself too. I hugged her, then took a picture of our neighbor devouring Grandma's ribs like a starving animal and clicked post on the Facebook group. My classmate Rory randomly slammed the table during quiet reading time, so my teacher grabbed him from his chair and physically dragged him into the closet. You're not coming out until you stay silent for 20 minutes. She hit the timer on her stopwatch. I put my hand up, but Rory has Tourette's. He can't control it. We could hear him banging to get out, but she padlocked the closet. Stop faking and you'll be out soon. I was appalled and went to leave the classroom to get help, but she slapped my hand away and locked the door. Nobody's leaving. This faker is only gonna learn the hard way. Rory kept ticking from the closet, hitting, yelling, and shaking the door, but she just smiled like this was a game. We looked at each other horrified. Someone pointed to Rory's medication bottle on his desk. Miss, please let him out. He could have a panic attack. But she chuckled. Medication and panic attacks for a made-up condition? Don't be ridiculous. But Rory's tics were getting louder. We could hear him crying now, hitting his head against the closet walls, scratching and clawing. Our teacher stormed over to the closet. I'm restarting the timer every time I hear a noise. But that's when someone knocked on our door. The principal. She went pale and yelled, anyone who says a word is getting detention for a month, and I'm locking you in the closet with him. She ran to the door, adjusted her hair, and opened. The principal walked in. Hey, I'm just here for the report papers. I think they're in there. He pointed to the closet Rory was in. My heart jumped, and I could see the teacher go completely pale. He started walking to the closet, but she jumped in front of him. I'll get them for you. She sprinted to the back. We all sat there praying he'd notice. She covered the closet door with her body. She unlocked it and opened it just enough to grab the folder. The principal didn't notice. But then, as she padlocked the door shut, it happened. Rory banged from the inside, loud. Her jaw dropped, and we all held our breath. My heart was pounding. The principal raised an eyebrow. What was that noise? She started stuttering. Something just fell. No big deal. She smiled and handed him the folder. The principal looked at her closely. Okay, thanks, miss. He started walking away. We all sat there, trying to work up the courage to say something, but we were 8. We'd seen what she did to Rory. We were too scared. The principal closed the door, and for the next 20 minutes, nobody moved. Rory's ticking slowed, then stopped completely. She looked at her watch. Done. She walked to the closet. See? Wasn't so hard now to stop faking, was it? She opened the door, and Rory was lying on the floor. Foam was coming from his mouth. Our teacher went pale and instantly started running out of the classroom. We thought she was about to get away, but just as she reached the door, the principal walked in, blocking her path. These aren't the right papers, he said. But then he noticed Rory on the floor. His jaw dropped and he instantly called police. Our teacher started literally twitching in fear, and while putting handcuffs on her, she was so scared her hands just kept ticking. Stay still, they ordered her. I can't control it, she cried out. I yelled at her. Yeah, neither could Rory. I saw her jaw drop as she finally realized he couldn't control it. Right as I sat down in my seat, I felt a sharp thud in my back. I tried to ignore it, but it happened again. Boom, boom. I turned around and saw a 12-year-old kid kicking the back of my seat. He looked at me and kicked it again. I turned to his mom. Hey, can you get your kid to stop that? She just looked at him, patted him on the head, and kept scrolling on her phone. I sat back down, but again, bang, bang, bang. I felt my fists clench. I stood up again and said, hey, get your kid under control. She didn't even look. She had noise-canceling headphones. I was about to lose it. The flight attendant saw, is there a problem here? The kid kicked my seat again, and she said, ma'am, can you get your child to stop? She nodded yes, but the second she walked away, he started kicking again. I yelled, stop, but he just stuck his tongue out and yelled, loser. His mom laughed and said, he just won his soccer championship. Let him have some fun, you lowlife. Now sit back down like the peasant you are. She put her headphones back on, and I knew I couldn't hold back. I walked out to the row behind them and sat down in the empty seat behind the kid. Then I raised my legs and started kicking the kid's seat as hard as I could. He instantly started screaming, and his mom stood up. Hey, stop that! I kept kicking, harder. He started crying, and his mom's face was turning red. She screamed for a flight attendant, and she ran back over. He's harassing us! I kept kicking, and the flight attendant was trying not to laugh. His mom was crying now too. Then, I stood up and went back to my seat, and for the rest of the flight, it was peaceful bliss. I'm 30, and my family still treats me like a baby, so I put a knife to their throats to prove them wrong. We were at my cousin's wedding, and my aunt showed me the seating chart that had me at the kids' table. I was sat surrounded by 8-year-olds when my aunt walked over with wine in her hand, but gave me a juice box. Babies don't drink alcohol, she laughed. My mom appeared and wiped the imaginary juice off my face with a napkin. They walked away laughing. You see, I'm the youngest of 7 by 10 years, so I've always been the baby no matter what. I was at the table staring at the crayons I'd been given when my uncle walked over with a plastic plate and chicken nuggets cut into pieces. He gave me a plastic fork with the prongs cut off. Careful with the fork, buddy. He ruffled my hair and walked away. The kids were laughing at me. I had a medical degree and was being told to be careful with a plastic fork. I heard adults laughing behind too and decided to just leave. I went to stand up, up, when suddenly, I heard choking. I turned around, and Aunt Janet was going purple and grasping her throat. Mom was screaming, "I thought you said you grew out of your shrimp allergy." Janet collapsed and started turning blue. Someone called 911, but they were 10 minutes out. 10 minutes Janet didn't have. There was no EpiPen because she'd stopped carrying it years ago. My uncle panicked and knelt beside her. Everyone was screaming at him to do something, so he started randomly pressing her chest, which only made Janet turn more blue. I had to do something, so I grabbed a nearby steak knife and one of the kids' pens beside me. I knelt beside Janet and pushed my uncle's hands away. He screamed, "What are you doing? You're too young for this." But I didn't even reply and put the knife to Janet's throat. My mom grabbed my hand immediately. "What are you doing with that knife?" And I yelled back louder than I've ever yelled at them. "I know what I'm doing. Do you want Janet to live or no?" The entire room froze, stunned. My uncle butt in. "But you're a baby. You can't know what you're doing." That was the moment I had enough. I just looked at him and shrugged. "Okay, fine. I guess I don't. Keep doing your compressions and kill her." I backed away from Janet and went to stand up. But Mom grabbed my arm, her face pale. Okay, just do what you have to, please." Janet had maybe 3 minutes left. I got the steak knife and cut into her throat. My family watched in horror. They thought I was killing her, and every few seconds someone tapped my arm to ask if I'm sure I know what I'm doing. I opened her throat and inserted the hollow pen cap into the incision, and air started rushing through. Janet's chest rose and slowly her color started returning. My mom hugged me so tight I lost control of the pen cap and had to put it back in the right place. And when the paramedics arrived, one of them recognized me immediately. "Dr. Yen?" My mom's head snapped. "Wait, him? A doctor?" The paramedic looked at her. "Ma'am, he's the youngest neurosurgeon in the country. You should be incredibly proud." My whole family stared at me red and embarrassed and never infantilized me again. The second Ms. Jackson opened the door, our whole class went silent. She was everyone's favorite teacher, but when we saw her that day, her hair was completely gone. Nobody said a word, and she started teaching like nothing happened. She handed out snacks to all the kids who couldn't afford food and offered to stay after class every day. But now everyone stared at her like she was a stranger. Soon, kids started making jokes about her. They said she was balder than Mr. Clean, and I even saw someone post a picture on an anonymous Instagram account saying she looked like a cancer patient. Another boy even spread a rumor that she was transitioning. I wanted to punch him in the face, but knew it wasn't worth it. Ms. Jackson started to look really upset and came to class every day exhausted. But despite all the teasing, she kept treating everyone with kindness, even those she knew made fun of her. I tried asking her what was going on, but she said, "No, please don't get involved. I don't want them to make fun of you too." She kept smiling, but I felt horrible for her. We were in the middle of class when someone yelled, "What did you say, Caillou?" The other bullies started laughing, but they all froze. Ms. Jackson just broke down crying. They were silent and felt horrible now. She wiped her tears and told everyone that her husband passed away last night. He had cancer, and she shaved her head to support him. The guy stood up. "Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry," but she said, "It's okay. You can all be dismissed. This is my last day teaching." Everyone felt terrible. When I was 6, my dad handed me a $20 bill and told me to step on it every time someone at school made me feel worthless. The first week, I stepped on it every day. I stepped on it when my clothes were called ugly and when kids called me stupid. I stepped on it every time someone stepped on me. By the end of the month, I'd stepped on it 57 times and felt extremely worthless. I brought the bill to my dad, and he brought me to the store with the now torn and dirty $20 bill. He told me to pick what I wanted. I grabbed armfuls of candy and put them on the counter. My dad told me to now pay, and I took out the $20. The cashier started bagging my candy, and my dad pointed out that my bill was still accepted no matter how destroyed it was, telling me I was just like the bill. My value was defined by who I was, not by how many times I'd been stepped on. Everyone laughed at my shoes because they knew I was the poorest kid at school. I lived in an orphanage, didn't have parents, but when one of my friends asked me to sleep over at his house, I couldn't believe it. His mom picked us up after school, and when we got to his house, I couldn't believe my eyes. He had his own TV in his room, more shoes than I'd ever owned in my life, and the softest bed I've ever felt. His mom woke us up the next morning and said, "Do you guys want some pancakes?" I was in heaven. I couldn't even remember the last time I had pancakes. But just before I could tell her yes, he yelled, "Get out, Mom! We don't want your stupid pancakes." She looked upset. "Maybe your friend would like some honey." I opened my mouth, but again he yelled, "No! Get out, Mom, you ruin everything." She looked like she was about to cry, but just slowly closed the door. I sat there in shock and looked over at him. He just went to bed like nothing even happened, and I immediately started grabbing my things. "Wait, no, please don't go." I kept packing. I opened the door and saw his mom still in tears in the kitchen. "Please, you're my only friend." And in that moment, I turned around and said, "Yeah, I can see why." I took a pair of his shoes and walked out. I was sweeping my garage when my neighbor stormed in and screamed, "Murderer!" Mr. Gray's cat Mittens had been missing for 3 days, and I'd seen him putting up wanted posters to find me because I was never home. Now he found me. He pointed at a tuft of gray and white fur. "Evidence!" I pulled it out and held it up. "That's from a winter coat. That's exactly what a murderer would say. He spotted the metal cage I'd set near the wall for the raccoon that kept raiding my trash. He pulled a single gray hair off the wire and held it up like he was in a courtroom. Mrs. Walden poked her head through the garage door. "Is everything all right?" Gray waved the cage at her. "He murdered Mittens." Mrs. Walden looked at me and gasped. "You monster!" More neighbors drifted up the driveway behind her. Gray pointed at the garbage bags in my truck. "He's disposing of the body." I threw my hands up. "It's old paint cans and Christmas lights." Exactly what someone guilty would say. I slammed my broom on the floor. "Fine. Search the whole garage." They pulled out boxes and flipped open bins while Gray supervised with his arms crossed. Someone held up a crumpled tarp and asked if it was cat-related. A meow cut through the garage. Everyone froze. Gray looked at me like he'd caught his confession. I pulled the door open and a squirrel shot off the shelf, landed on my shoulder, and launched itself into the crowd. Mrs. Walden screamed and grabbed onto Gray. Half the driveway scattered. Mrs. Walden was still holding onto Gray's arm when we heard another meow. This one came from outside. Mittens was stretched across the hood of Gray's own car, yawning. I looked at Gray. That's exactly what a kidnapper's car would look like. My phone rang in my pocket while driving. I answered, "Hello?" But a man said, "I'm taking your child now." "Huh?" I said, "What did you say?" "I take your child from your house. I just bought her." I squeezed my phone. Who was this guy? "Like hell you are. Leave my girl alone." But he hung up. I started sweating, calling my wife, and as soon as she answered, I screamed, "Where is Riley?" At home?" I left her there to go grab groceries, but there's a man fixing our AC right now." My heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. "He just called me and said he's taking her. Call the cops." Oh my God. I knew something was off when I answered the door. I drove as fast as I could, running every red light I could without hurting someone. Every second felt like an hour, knowing my 8-year-old daughter was alone with some creep. My wife called back sobbing that he was a wanted kidnapper. He had a white van. Oh God, why did I leave her alone with him? I took the turn onto our street so fast my tires screamed against the pavement, but the van was still there. I got out and ran to the front door. "Hey, where are you?" The cops ran in right behind me with my wife. There was rope on the ground, something that looked like blood, and my heart started racing. My wife started crying, knowing our girl was gone. Then we heard something. Someone was in the kitchen. The cops crept up with their guns drawn. "Hands up!" I looked and saw the repairman eating our food. He jumped up. "Where is my daughter?" He instantly dropped the fork. "Sorry, sir. I didn't know you'd be home." He was backing away. "What did you do?" He pointed at the food. "I just hungry. Long day. No lunch." My wife yelled, "Check his van. She might be in his van." My wife was still sobbing, holding her face while they searched the van, our basement, and they handcuffed him as she screamed, "Where's Riley? How could you do this to my sweet girl?" I hugged her, saying over and over that we'd find her. Then we heard it. "What's going on?" Everyone froze. Riley walked downstairs in her pajamas, yawning. We were shocked. The officers looked at me. "But he told me he was taking her." I pulled out my phone to show the officers the threatening call, but a text popped up. "Oops, sorry, wrong number." When my cousin got rejected from state, I leaned back in my chair and said, "Maybe community college is more your speed." Jake went red and left the room without a word. Everyone who was comforting him just looked up at me in disbelief. My mom pulled a tiny notebook out of her purse and slid it across the table. "Since you have so much to say, for the next 48 hours you can write it down, but you're not allowed to speak. Any dumb thing you have to say goes in here because I don't want to hear it." I wrote, "This is stupid," in big letters and held it up. She looked at what I'd written and smiled. "Clock starts now." By the time I got to school the next morning, I'd already filled 10 pages with everything I wanted to say and couldn't. A kid dumped chocolate milk on my shoes in the cafeteria, and I sat there filling another page while he walked off laughing with his friends. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was write faster and harder until the pen almost tore through the paper. At lunch, my friend started telling a story about her weekend, and I reached for the notebook to write my version because I had a better one. But then I stopped. She was smiling. The whole table was leaning in. She kept going, and everyone laughed at the punchline, and I realized she'd never gotten to finish a story when I was around because I always jumped in with mine. That one sat with me. By Tuesday, I stopped writing what I wanted to say and started writing what I was seeing. Jake's shoulders dropped every time someone mentioned college, and I'd never noticed because I was always the one talking over it. My dad rubbed his eyes when people argued at dinner, and I'd never seen it because I was usually the one arguing. I'd been cutting people off mid-sentence my whole life, and the only reason I finally saw it was because for the first time my mouth was shut. Every page in that notebook was someone I'd been too loud to see. Wednesday night, my parents sat me down and handed me the notebook. The 48 hours were over, and I could talk again. But for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to say. I flipped through pages of things I'd wanted to scream, picked up the phone, and called Jake. The first thing I ever wrote in that notebook was, "This is stupid." The first thing I said out loud was, "I'm sorry." My daughter came home from kindergarten and asked me, "Daddy, what does adopted mean?" My heart instantly stopped because I did adopt her, but I hadn't told her yet. I asked where she heard that word, and she said, "My teacher told me I was adopted." My jaw dropped, and I knelt beside her and took her hands. "What did your teacher say being adopted means, sweetheart?" My daughter looked at the ground. She said it means nobody wanted me. I was furious and instantly pulled out my phone to write a complaint to the school, but then my daughter tugged my sleeve. "Daddy, don't be mad." I looked at her. Why? Because I told her that's not true. My daddy picked me out of everyone in the whole world. That means he wanted me the most. She was smiling at me. I teared up and called her the best little girl in the world. But my daughter wasn't done. Then I told my teacher maybe she's just jealous because nobody picked her. I started laughing, and the next morning I came to school and reported the teacher anyway. But as she was leaving, I walked up to her and looked at her empty hand. No engagement ring. Nobody actually picked you, huh? My daughter wasn't joking, I guess. She started crying and walked out. A little girl called 911 and whispered, "Can I order a large pizza, please?" Dispatch told me it was probably a prank because they get these calls every week, but said her voice shook when she gave them her address. Kids don't whisper like that unless they're hiding from someone, so I immediately drove to her house. I knocked, and a man opened the door with a big fake smile. "Oh, hey, officer, what brings you here?" I told him we got a call from this address, and he laughed, telling me his daughter was just playing pretend on the phone. But I noticed the sweat running down his forehead. I told him I wanted to check on her, and his smile disappeared. "Do you have a warrant? Because you can't just barge into my house without one." I'd seen enough guilty men to know what one looked like, so there was no way I was leaving without that little girl. While he kept going about his rights, a little girl peeked around the corner behind him. She had messy hair and large eye bags. She looked straight at me and mouthed, "Help me." I pushed past him and crouched down to her. "Hey sweetie, can you show me where the kitchen is?" The man grabbed my shoulder and told me I was scaring her, but when I stood up and rested my hand on my taser, his grip instantly loosened. The little girl quickly grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hallway. Her sleeves rode up, and I saw dark purple marks wrapped around both her wrists. My heart instantly pounded because I knew exactly what this meant. The little girl whispered to me, "My mom's in the bedroom. She's hurt bad. He won't let us leave." I grabbed my radio and called for backup. The man heard me and came charging down the hallway. He reached for the girl, but I slammed him against the wall and held him there. He kept swinging and screaming, but I didn't let go until I heard sirens outside. They cuffed him, and I kicked the bedroom door open. His wife was curled up on the floor with a black eye and purple marks down her arms. Her daughter ran past me and collapsed into her. Her mom held her tight and looked up at me. "How did you find us?" Before I could answer, her daughter said, "The lady on Dad's TV ordered a pizza when she was in trouble and the police came, so I did the same thing." My girlfriend was famous on Instagram, but as soon as she accidentally posted the front of our house, men started showing up and stalking her. We had to move multiple times, but somehow they kept coming. And when we were out for dinner one night, I found out why. I saw her posting and she tagged the location. I tried to stop her, but she said, "Stop overreacting. Nobody's gonna come. You'll see." I was furious, but as we were walking back that night, I heard something rustling in one of the bushes. I could have sworn someone was in there, but she told me I was paranoid. I thought I was going crazy and told her she had to stop or I was leaving her. She yelled at me, saying I wasn't supporting her, that I was insecure. I was so mad I just walked out. But the second I started my car, I saw him, a very tall man halfway through our window. I froze, but as I jumped out, she screamed. I burst through the door and saw her. On the ground, he was pulling her clothes. She started screaming for help, and without thinking, I grabbed the mug off our table. I had to do something, so I smashed it against his head as hard as I could. I called the cops, and my case was ruled as self-defense. "You're late." I looked up, and 5 kids in matching black hoodies were staring at me. One of them slid me a burrito, and they all took a bite at the exact same time. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. The kid at the end of the table glanced at the cafeteria doors. A teacher walked in, and every phone at the table switched to a calculator app at the same time. The teacher passed. Phones flipped back. The kid across from me leaned over. "Good reflexes. You're in." I'd been at this school for 20 minutes. I didn't even know what I was in. By Wednesday, a sticky note showed up inside my textbook. Operation Thursday, Hallway B during 3rd period. Bring gum. I bought a whole pack and showed up not knowing what I was walking into. They handed me a stack of papers and pointed me toward the door. "You're on lookout, and if anyone comes down that hallway, you whistle and we're gone." My heart was pounding like I was robbing a bank. I stood at the end of the hallway while they went desk to desk in room 203, sticking papers under every seat with the gum. Friday, the leader pulled me into a stairwell and handed me a black hoodie. "You didn't run, and you didn't ask questions, so welcome to the shadows." The following Monday, he told me to meet at the library after school. I walked in, expecting expecting some kind of underground headquarters, and found 6 kids in black hoodies sitting around a table covered in flashcards, open textbooks, and color-coded notes. One of them was walking a freshman through fractions on a whiteboard. I just stood there. The leader looked up and smiled. Those papers we stuck under the desks were study guides for kids who can't afford tutoring. What did you think we were doing? I looked at the calculator app still open on their phones, the synchronized snack break happening in the corner, the black hoodies hunched over homework. All of it was the most dramatic study group in the history of high school. Next semester, a new kid sat at our table looking terrified. I slid him a burrito without looking up. "You're late." We were trick-or-treating when SpongeBob answered the door and pulled out a wrapped gift, specifically for my little sister Lily. "This is for the birthday girl." Before I could ask how he knew that, Lily slapped the gift from his hand. "I know what's in that. I'm not doing this again." She dropped her candy, running away. This was the 4th time in the last year she's run away from a fictional character trying to give her a present. Weirdly, our parents seemed annoyed. Dad picked up the box and thanked SpongeBob like they knew each other. I noticed a strange tattoo on SpongeBob's shin, but before I could ask about anything, we were heading home. Back at the house, Lily had locked herself upstairs. I kept demanding to know what that was and what's inside the box. Dad eventually gave in and opened it. Inside was a simple science set with beakers, test tubes, and safety goggles. Lily loved science, so this made sense. But why would she run away from something she loved? I tried to pick it up to examine closer, but Mom yelled, "Don't get your fingerprints on it," and closed the lid. The next morning, my parents told me Lily was too sick to go school. But when I asked her, she said our parents were actually forcing her to stay home so she could see SpongeBob again. I knew something was wrong and decided to investigate. I left for school normal, then hid behind a truck and watched our house. An hour in a black van pulled into our driveway, and 3 men with duffel bags walked inside. I was terrified and called 911. 3 minutes later, police flooded our street. They broke our door down, and the strange men came out in handcuffs, one of them having the shin tattoo. But then Mom and Dad came out in handcuffs too. Finally, Lily stepped out, but she wearing a white lab coat. Why was she wearing that? An officer walked over and showed me photos. "This is the meth lab our parents were running in your basement." He showed another photo of my sister pouring something. "Your sister is gifted in chemistry. They used her to produce it."
সন্ধে আকাশে খুঁজে আজ
না মানে এই হ্যাঁ ইয়ে ওই যে সিনেমা শাহরুখ খানের সিনেমা দেখতে দেখতে বড় হইছি না।
ভয় পাচ্ছেন কেন? সামনে আসেন। আরে আরো কাছে আসেন।
খুঁজে আজ জানালায় জোড়া চোখ।
আগে দায়িত্ব ছিল না, তাই হারানোর ভয়ও ছিল না। আর এখন দায়িত্ব আছে, তুই ছাড়া কিন্তু আমার কেউ নাই। হ্যাঁ,
আমি জায়গায় থাকতে পারবো না, তুইও ঘুমাই পড়।
আচ্ছা আমি যাইতেছি।
কি সমস্যা? বাচ্চা আজকে তোমার কি হয়েছে বলো তো?
যখন আমি খোলা চুলে দেখি এই দিলে तुम नहीं समझोगी प्रिया।
হয় না। আব্বাও যে আমাদের এভাবে ছেড়ে চলে যাবে।
বোমে মরিচ
খুব ভালো হয়।
বোমে মরিচ দেন। দেখতো ফুচকাটা হলো কিনা।
একটু নেন না।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, মামা আসুক তারপর শুরু করি।
দোষ আমরা সবাই মিলে তোরে মাফ করে দিল, আল্লাহ তাআলা তোর জীবনও মাফ করে।
সুস্থ মানে হ্যাঁ নাচবেন না কোনো কোনো বিবেকবান সুস্থ
কারণ এরকম ব্যবহার করছিল ওই দিন।
পানিটা খাও। আহা বসতে দে, বসেন না।
রিক্সার ব্যাটারি ডাউন হয়ে গেছে।
বসেন বসেন।
মা তুমি এসব চিন্তা করো কেন?
এক নাম্বারই দিছি, তোমার আম্মা ভালো হয়ে যাবে। চল।
ধন্যবাদ। একটা মিনিট, আপনি মেডিকেলেরই কিছু একটা ব্যবসা করেন?
তুই জানো না কি করে?
কিছু খাবা না?
আপনার কথা শেষ করেন তারপর খাবেন। আসতে পারলি না?
কাম কাজ গুছাইছো কিছু?
না তুমি গুছাইছো?
আমিও তো কিছু গুছাইতে পারিনি।
নতুন ডাইরেক্টর আইছে, আইছে পর বলে মেডিকেলের অবস্থা ভালো, পাবলিক সব দেই হেনে যায়।
আমার নিজের মনে হইতেছে আমি আমি কিং বাদশা।
বেলা শেষে পেন্সিল ভাষা পেল কি?
কেমন মনমোয়া হয়ে থাকিস, কি হয়েছে আমার বল।
ঠিক তোমার বাচ্চা।
এমনি সূত্রাবো আমি জানি না।
আমার কাছে আইডিয়া আছে। জামশেদ চাচার খবরে নিয়ে গেছে মানে
উনার কাছে ঢুকছিল তাই।
আলার পুদায় পোলাপান ডাকতে। আমি তোমারে হারাইতে দিব না।
এবার যাও। বাচ্চা আজকে তোমার কি হয়েছে বলো তো?
আবার চুরি করছে। আজকে একদিন কি তার একদিন আমি তার কাছে টাকা খেলাম আমার জমা। কেন হ্যাঁ আমার সংসারের টাকা চুরি কইরা জমানো টাকা চুরি কইরা তুই কি করলি? এত বেলা করে ঘুমাইলে চলবো?
তুরু এত ভালো একটা স্বপ্ন দেখতেছিলাম আর আমার সং কইলা না, একদিন আইসো আমার পারফরমেন্স দেখতে আইসো, দেখো মানুষ কেমনে তালি দেয়।